So you got big goals for 2024, huh? Maybe it's the year that you finally want to launch your business. Maybe it's the year that you want to start taking action towards the habits and goals that really align with your future self rather than your past self. Maybe you're just a highly ambitious human being who's like, you know what? 2024 is about to be the year where I absolutely blast off. If you can feel that in your bones, if you can feel that in your body, and if you're listening to this, I guarantee you can, then this podcast episode is exactly for you. We're going to be doing what I call the pre-work for 2024 being the absolute best year you've ever had. And the pre-work also entails diving into a little bit of the shadow side. And now for the longest time, as a high achiever myself, a recovering high achiever, I would look at the shadow work and especially self-sabotage, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And I'd be like, oh, no, that couldn't possibly be me. I couldn't possibly be sabotaging my own goals. Like, I'm highly capable. I know what it is that I want. I'm constantly working hard. Yet, what I have come to learn through my process in examining my own life and working with countless clients is that even if you are working incredibly hard and your life looks maybe quote unquote perfect on the outside, there might still be a part of you deep down in those internal layers beneath all the stuff that looks pretty and the stuff that we like to look at that is potentially sabotaging the things that you truly want. And this comes through when you have these really massive goals and maybe you get perplexed in your mind where you're like, I know what it is that I want, but why am I not doing the actions to get myself there? You have a game plan, you have these ideas in your mind, but for some reason, something always comes up and gets in the way of it. Whether it feels incredibly real, so like a life circumstance comes up and gets in the way of it, or if you just find yourself constantly being distracted from the goals that you know that you desire to achieve. There are very, very sneaky ways that behind closed doors in our beautiful little subconscious minds, we can get in the way of our own goals. And this is the heart of self-sabotage. It's a topic that for the longest time, I didn't really want to dive into. Because again, I was like, that couldn't possibly be me. But when you start to get clearer and clearer on what it actually is, it doesn't have to be this big and scary thing. It can actually be a lot more hidden and seemingly productive than you think. And so I'm excited for this entire podcast episode because we're basically just going to take a look at what this is. And maybe there's a part of you that's feeling excited by this because you're like, yes, Steph, I totally know that I sabotage X, Y, and Z goals and let's do it. Or maybe there's a part of you that listens to this and you're like, what is she talking about? Wherever you're at, it's A-okay. And my intention for this entire episode is to honestly get excited about excavating. Every single time I recognize a new part of myself that maybe is like, I don't like labeling things as blocks in my world because I think that the minute that you label something as a block, it really becomes the block, but something that is creating resistance towards your greater goals. Once we get to look at these things, then we can actually start to create new choices and therefore accelerate your path towards your goals and towards your dreams. That's what I know I'm here for in 2024. That's what I know you're here for in 2024. So let's start by setting the foundation and doing the pre-work to really get clear on what are those little mini parts that might not yet be on board with your big goals that you can start to really press on the gas pedal in 2024. So are you ready for this? Let's dive into the podcast episode. We're going to dive into exactly what the heck is self-sabotage, understand why it comes up, and then also move through 5 different steps to clean up that self-sabotage that you can truly go for it in 2024. And of course, I can never claim to be the absolute expert on self-sabotage because there is a whole lot to learn in this area. However, I am going to take you through exactly what I've learned from my own personal process and working with countless clients on these exact patterns. So if you're ready for the good stuff, let's dive into the episode. Now, first things first, what the heck is self-sabotage actually? And for me, I define it as knowing what it is that you desire, but then either unconsciously or consciously doing something that's in opposition to it. So again, it might come up in very, very sneaky ways where it looks very productive. Maybe you get distracted really easily. Maybe you're focusing on all of the things that need to get done and all the fires that need to put out rather than the actual needle moving activities within your business or within your life. Maybe there is chaos that happens in your life. Maybe there is a very, very real experience that comes up that distracts you and takes you away from the goal at hand. Now, do I think that every single distraction in your life is you sabotaging? Absolutely not, because that is a way to get yourself into a downward spiral. However, I do think it's something very interesting to get curious on. When a distraction comes up within your life, of recognizing, is this actually as true and as real and as much of a fire as it feels like? Or could this potentially be my ego's cute little fun way of taking me away from the thing that I know is actually what I desire? Now, you might look at this and be like, Steph, well, if it's what I desire, why would I ever sabotage away from that? Well, the interesting thing is that likely the things that you desire also allow you to expand and stretch in ways that you might not do without them. Right. So you have that goal. Let's say you have a goal to be speaking on a stage, or you have a goal to write an incredible book within your life. Having that goal and working towards that goal is going to invite you to step up into a new version of yourself. You're going to have to do things in new ways. You're going to have to speak to certain people. You're going to have tough conversations. There might be habits that you have to cut out of your life, or people and relationships that get to shift. And now you might not know all of this consciously, but on a deep soul level, you understand that something is going to shift. Something's going to have to change. And what happens within our own egos is when we sense change, or there is a sense of like, oh my God, something could shift, the ego goes straight to, oh my God, what's going to leave my life? What's going to change? What am I going to lose in the process? And the ego starts to get scared and says, well, how can I grip onto all of the sameness within my life? Oh, easiest way to grip onto sameness? Keep replaying the same patterns over and over. Keep getting distracted from that one thing that you know is going to stretch you to evolve and shift and change and potentially even fail at times. Stay distracted from that. And then we stay in the comfort zone. Then we stay continuing to do these same things over and over and over and over and over. And you never have to look at it. Right? Sneaky, sneaky ways. And so there's likely this part of yourself and your higher self, your soul, that's committed to a greater goal, that's committed to evolution. But then there's that sneaky little part of yourself, and we all have it. It is so human. I love that part of myself because she is the greatest source of my growth. The one who desires to keep me from it, the one who desires to go into sameness over newness, and will create scenarios that feel so freaking real. So real. The greatest example of this is, and I know you all have been through this, you have a to-do list and you know that number one thing that needs to get done. But then of course, there's like 5 other little mini things. And you're like, oh, well, if I just, clean the house and then I, straighten up everything around my desk and then I correspond with this person and then I do this, and you do all of the 5 million things that are underneath that one big thing. And then you never get to the one big thing. Yeah. That's a cute little way of your brain, your ego potentially keeping you from the very thing that you truly desire. And so when we look at, why do we actually do this? It's all from safety. It's like as human beings, we all just want to feel safe. We want to feel loved. And that's all that our egos are trying to do, is to keep us in that form of safety and to keep you feeling like everything is constant in your life. And so there is no blame or shame on this part of yourself for coming up and giving you these old patterns and keeping you in this sameness, because all it's doing is wanting to keep you safe. And so we don't get to demonize that part of yourself. You don't get to say, oh, it's wrong or it's bad or it shouldn't be there, or why am I doing this or anything like that. That's the quickest way to keep yourself in it. And I know you're not here for that, right? So we want to love that version of you, because all it's doing is trying to keep you safe. And so when you can recognize, okay, so this is the part of myself that wants to protect me. This is the part of myself that wants to keep me safe. Now what? When you can love that part of you, it allows you to see beyond it into the actual truth of, oh, I want something bigger than just safety. I want something bigger than just my comfort zone. Because the truth is, where does your safety actually lie? It's not in having the same patterns over and over and over. Your safety lies in something so much greater. It's your connection to self. It's your connection to source. It's that trust. It's faith. It's in your evolution. You get to find your own definition of safety, but I guarantee it is not staying in the same things over and over and over. Otherwise, wouldn't it feel a little bit better, right? Would there actually be that part of you that's like, oh, I'm here for something so much greater. I'm here for something that's a bigger purpose than just this. That wouldn't be there if your safety truly lied in just doing the same things over and over. So if you have that nudge to create something bigger, to live for a bigger purpose, then also recognize that your safety lies in something greater as well. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. And it doesn't mean that every single step along the way is going to be perfectly planned out and rainbows and butterflies and beautiful all of the time. But it means that you're going to learn how to trust yourself. You're going to learn how to trust something so much greater than you in the process. And that is true safety. That is where your safety lies, right? So, other fun ways that I see self-sabotage really come up. One of my favorites is wanting to go back to an old way of doing things. I see this all of the time in conversations with clients and with you guys, where it's like, I just want to, like, I was so motivated at that time in my life. I just want to go back to that. Like, I had so much energy. I want to go back to that. Or it could be on the flip side where you're like, oh my God, this happened last time. And I really do not want that to happen. I need something else to happen. I do not want that to happen, that thing that happened last time. And you get so afraid of either going back to that old way, or you get afraid of doing something new because that old way was so good. And what's so interesting to me, I always say there's no backseas on life. There are no backseas on life. That if time has passed and you have evolved, which I guarantee you have, because that's just how the world works, there is no possible way that you could ever go back because you have already grown from that. You have already evolved into a different version of yourself. And so all we're doing is evolving forward rather than going back. There literally is no possible way that you could go back. Yes, old patterns can arise to the surface. Yes, you can have similar experiences if you haven't yet learned the lesson. But the you who is experiencing that lesson, even if it comes up for a second time, is completely different than you were the last time, with different skills, different capabilities, different understandings of yourself that allow you to handle the situation much differently. And so that part of yourself that's so afraid of going back to the old way of doing things, or that's afraid of doing something new, is that actually true? Or could it again be a way that the ego comes in and wants to keep you in these cycles of sameness rather than going for the goal that really, really stretches you, that's going to allow you to step into a new way of doing things, right? Other sneaky ways is saying that what is happening right now, right in front of you, is not as it should. Oh my God, this challenge that's right in front of me, it should not be here, rather than stepping into true ownership of what is, of saying, you know what, it is here though. So what am I going to do with it? It can come up in procrastination, in putting off that very thing that you know that you desire to do, in holding back or playing small, knowing that, let's say that example of writing a book is going to really stretch you to show up in a new way, to have greater discipline with yourself or greater structure within your life, or to believe in yourself in a new way. Yet there's still a part of you that's like, maybe not. Maybe I won't. Maybe I won't go for the full Monty of the book. Maybe I'll just, settle for creating content. Maybe that'll actually never happen and you continue playing small. It could be cutting the cord on something when you've only just begun. I see this all of the time, especially in business. You have an idea for something and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to do this. I'm going to launch this thing. I'm going to put it out into the world. And then halfway through, you're like, oh my gosh, but it hasn't gotten the response that I wanted. And so you cut the cord. Or you settle for coasting, where you're like, okay, well, it got like somewhat of a response and I think that's good enough for me. So I'm just going to kind of coast and I'm not going to continually evolve and stretch myself. Now, this does not mean you don't get time for rest. Of course, always rest. But I'm curious on that coasting piece. Is it true? And is it real? Or is it potentially the ego being like, okay, we stretched enough. Now we can rest. Now we can just stop growing for a little bit and we're good. Now, I share with you all these patterns not to harp on the negative or ways that this might be coming up within your life, but also to recognize that awareness is choice. And once you have awareness of like, oh, interesting, that procrastination, it's not actually anything that's wrong with me. It might just be my ego that's coming up and saying, oh, do we really want to stretch into that big goal and keeping me in a pattern of sameness, right? Once you can recognize it, then we actually have choice. Then you can choose to do things in a new way. And so sometimes it just takes pulling up the hood and being like, what is actually there? And I invite you to reflect within your life if any of those have resonated with you. Like, interesting, what's here for me? And I always love to take the lens of curiosity with any patterns that I notice arising to the surface, rather than, again, like, oh my God, that shouldn't be there, or I should know better than this. No, you're human. You are absolutely human. So get curious with it and look at it as if, okay, interesting. There's something here for me. Let's dive deeper. And if you want to dive deeper, we're going to now get in to the 5 different ways to really clean up this self-sabotage that you can accelerate towards your goals. Are you ready for it? Let's do it. So the first thing to understand with self-sabotage is that you gotta know the goal that's actually at hand to understand what is sabotage and what is not, right? What is your intuition versus what is potentially your ego coming in and saying, oh, we should just do it in this way, right? Is you have to understand the goal at hand. And I was listening to a podcast recently that was with a productivity expert. His name is Nir Ayal, and I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of it, but he is absolutely phenomenal. And he talks about distraction. And he says that you can't really label anything as a distraction unless you know exactly what it's distracting you from. And if you don't know what it's distracting you from, then really you have no right saying, oh, that's a distraction or that's distracting me. And I found this so interesting. It made me laugh because I'm like, that is so real and so true. And the same is true with sabotage. Is like, if you don't know the goal that's at hand, then how do you know it's actually taking you away from it? And so the first thing is, whether you've actually taken time to get clear on it or not, is really sitting down and saying, what is my goal here? What is the goal for 2024? What is the goal for this day? What is the goal for this week? What is the goal for this month? Right? And you don't have to have it all done all at once, but it can start so simply as like, what is the goal for this day? I love to start with like, what are the top 3 things that you want to get done in this day? And when are you going to get them done? Having an actual plan, then you can understand what is taking you away from that. If you want to even zoom out, and if we look at 2024, what are your goals for 2024? What do you actually want to create in this world? What would be so fun? And I invite you to spend time really diving into this entire thing. And we might even do a podcast episode all around goal setting for 2024, because it is something so juicy and so intensive. I go through it with all of my clients, and it is truly one of their most favorite things that we do. So stay tuned with all that. So once you understand what is the actual goal at hand, then the second step is setting an intention to be shown a new way. And this is something that most people will skip. And they say, well, Steph, I set a goal, so why am I not following through? Well, have you set an intention with yourself to be shown something different this time? Now, what I mean by this is that there is a way of setting a goal and then going about your life as you've been going about, with all of your patterns, with all of your things, with all of your cute little ego stuff. And likely what will happen is you'll continue replaying the same patterns over and over and over. And you say, well, I set this new goal and I set it bigger and I got into the energy of it. So why is it not happening? Why am I not following through with it? Why am I not really taking the action towards it? Well, have you actually set an intention to do things in a new way? And so what I love to do is, based on whatever goal you have in front of you, is saying, you know what, universe? Show me how to be this. So for example, let's say you have a goal around wealth and prosperity within your life in 2024. And the intention then is, all right, source, show me how to be a steward of your wealth. Show me at the highest capacity what it means to be a steward of your wealth. Let's say you want to step into this highest level version of you. You see yourself as this beautiful CEO within your life, beginning a business or scaling your business. Right? What is the new way that you want to do something in? Maybe it's leadership. Maybe it's expanding your leadership. And you say, well, source, show me how to show up and act and live as my highest self leader. And once you set that intention, the wild thing that happens is that your life will start to show you all of the lessons, the experiences, the patterns, the people, whatever it is in your own unique experience that is no longer a match to that. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. There's a reason why most people won't do this. It's because it's the edgiest, yet likely most liberating part of the entire process, is to be shown a new way. Because sabotage preys on sameness of doing things in the ways that you've always done them, and staying stuck in these patterns that you stay in the comfort zone and you never fully break out into what it is that you desire. However, your truth, and your expansion, that is fed by your desire for newness, to do things in a new way. Show me how to do this in a new way. That can be the simplest intention. Show me how to do this in a new way. Universe, where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? That's an incredible prayer from A Course in Miracles that I use constantly within my life to really recognize what are the different patterns that are arising that are not fit for where I'm headed. And once you are aware, again, you have choice. And so likely how this will arise is this pattern will come up and you'll see it and you'll feel that little intuitive nudge of like, oh, shoot, this one. Okay, that way that I'm not speaking up with my boss. Oh, shoot. Okay, it's time to actually address this one. You're going to have to put on your big girl pants and say, yes, I am game. Let's do this, because me addressing this is in alignment with my greater goal. Me not addressing it is in alignment with what I've done in the past. Right? So the third step here is, once you become aware, is to step into newness over sameness. When that pattern arises and you get that little hit of like, oh, this is definitely something to address. How are you going to do it in a new way? How are you going to do it that's different than what you've done before? Your soul knows, your soul is going to guide you there, but it's up to you to actually listen. Right? So is what you're doing a reflection of what you've always done and therefore is safe? Or is what you're doing completely new and therefore stretching you in a new way? Now, the funny thing about stepping into newness is that it's uncomfortable. Like, let's be real. Doing something in a new way, like let's say you've never spoken up in a meeting before and you've never really like put your ideas out there, and you get this nudge internally to be like, okay, yeah, now it's time. Now it's time. I have this idea and it's happening. It's coming up to the surface, and you know that you're being called on to use your voice in a new way. To actually go into that meeting and to use your voice is going to likely be incredibly uncomfortable and also exhilarating at the same time. And you're going to end it and you're going to be like, oh my God, why didn't I do this sooner? This was the greatest high, or you're going to learn something from it. That's the most incredible part of your entire evolution and expansion. However, it is going to feel stretchy. So know that there's a little bit of stretching your capacity to hold uncomfortable experiences that happens. And when I started to become aware of this, and I still set this intention for myself every single day, is, can I do one tough thing a day? One tough conversation, one ballsy action move, one thing that's going to stretch my capacity to be a greater version of myself a day. You can handle that. You can totally handle one thing a day. Now, if you tell yourself I'm going to have to do all 5 of these at once, then maybe it'll be a lot, right? But one thing a day, you can definitely do one thing a day. Now, what would happen if you did one thing that was going to stretch you in alignment with your greater vision, your greater goals a day? 2024 better watch out, baby, because that is the start of absolute greatness. It is a source of your successment, which is your success and your fulfillment all together in 2024. It is the start of your success and your fulfillment and the entire blast off that's happening in 2024, stepping into newness and doing one tough thing per day. Now, the next step here is, once you're at this choice point and you recognize yourself at it, where you're like, okay, I have the option to do something in a completely radically new way, or I can go back and do the same thing that I've been doing over and over and over. Then, if you desire to dive even deeper into it, you can get curious on, what am I actually getting by holding on to this pattern? What am I getting from doing things in the same way? What am I getting by keeping my voice small and not speaking up? What am I getting by avoiding this one needle moving activity? What am I getting by rushing and putting something out into the world? What am I getting from that? Maybe it's that you continue getting to be the victim within your life that gets to be saved by somebody else. Maybe it's that you continue to play small and that feels a little bit safer. Maybe there is a perceived sense of love that you get from it. Like, what are you getting? Because there is something that is, to your own ego, sticky about this pattern, which is why we keep it in play, right? We wouldn't keep a pattern in play unless we were actually receiving something from it on some level, right? And so once you recognize, okay, what am I getting from this? Then you get to reframe it and say, is that actually true? And I'll give you an example of this from my own personal life and where I've noticed these fun little patterns coming up for me. And it's a very recent example. So in November and December of this year, I set the intention to do something in a very new way in my business. And for me, November and December historically have been the months where I've been the busiest, where I'm constantly launching something, I'm selling something, I'm getting prepared for 2024, I'm preparing my clients for 2024, and mostly traveling for the holidays, going home to see family for Thanksgiving, for Christmas. There's a lot that happens. And I noticed this year, and it was specifically leading up to Black Friday, that there was this desire within my heart and within my soul to slow down and to do something in a new way. To say, Steph, what would it be like to not even participate in that chaos and to really set the intention of going deep and diving into the foundational layers to prepare for something even greater? That was the deep knowing within my heart, coupled with the fact that Nolan is also running a jewelry store out of our beautiful house. And it's an incredibly busy, thriving jewelry store, especially in November and December. And he was like, you know what, babe, I could really use your support. So as you're diving in deep, can you support me in my business? Can you come and set up certain structures? And I was like, yes, that sounds amazing. Now, let me tell you that my ego had its own beautiful shit fit of like, oh my God, but what does this mean about me? What does it mean about, my business? What does it mean if I take this time to actually dive in deep and get very, very clear on what is coming through next? But I knew within my heart of like, this is the new thing. This is a new way of doing things, because previously, especially around the holidays, I would go home, and because I was selling something and I was launching something and I was doing all these things, of course, what I love about entrepreneurship is that I can travel and do it anytime. However, I also recognized that there was an element of distraction, of having split energy around the holidays, where I would get to spend it with my family, but then half of my brain would be on, business and being online and posting and things like that. And I was like, for once, for this year, I feel my soul going through an entire reset, and we're not going to do that. We're going to do something in a new way. But of course, my ego was like, what do you mean? What do you mean we're going to do something in a new way? This is how we've always done it. This is how we know the holidays to be. What do you mean? And even though this new way was surrounded by so much safety and so much love and so much deep knowing, there was still that part within my heart that was like, especially when Black Friday came around, I was like, well, maybe I'll just put something out. Maybe I'll just put something together and I'll just put it out there because that's what I've always done. Maybe I'll just, right? It's that knee-jerk reaction. And I remember calling up one of my good friends, and I remember FaceTiming her and being like, hey, I want to self-sabotage all of this safety and this entire intentional experience that I've set up for myself. I know that this is what I want within my heart, within my soul, but my ego is like screaming at me and saying, well, what if you just do this? What if you just do that? What if you do this? Right? And I got to recognize that pattern coming up, which is so interesting, right? When you look at self-sabotage, it looked very productive. It looked like, oh yeah, well, that would, maybe benefit me in X, Y, and Z way. But if I look at a deeper level, that was just the urgency of my ego saying, oh, you just need to put something out there because it's what you've always done. It's that sameness coming up again. And so when I get to look even deeper and say, well, what am I getting from doing that? What am I getting from just putting something out there because it's what I've always done? What am I getting from staying in the same pattern? Well, I'm getting to be in survival. I'm getting to feel rushed. I'm getting to have urgency. And if that's the only way that in the past I knew how to create, well, that feels safe. And so I got to recognize this entire pattern of, where does my creation actually come from? Does it come from my true heart and my soul, or does it come from survival, or does it come from a combination of both? And that was the most incredible pattern to start to recognize and unravel of like, whoa, there is actually something so much greater to create from than just survival. And there were so many times that I wanted to sabotage that. But what I've seen on the other side is that doing something in a new way has created the most richness within my life, not only in getting to support Nolan and be in the store during the holidays. And it's so beautiful and so fun to see people just getting gifts and be in the energy of it, of our community, but also in really allowing a deeper transformation to take place and create something so much bigger in 2024 than just little urgent pushes, which is never the space that I truly want to create from, because it's not in alignment with my soul and with my deeper purpose. Right? So once we look at, well, what are we actually getting from this pattern? Then you can reframe it and say, well, is that actually true? No, it's not true that, my only creation comes from survival. Actually, it comes from something so much bigger. And sometimes even just the awareness of, what am I getting from this, is the release of it. because in awareness you have choice, and I got to see that and do things in a new way and not sabotage and not do things in the same way just to cut the cord, right, of the tension that I was feeling within myself as I'm stretching into this new way of doing things. So once you look at, what am I actually getting from this? Then what I find is so fun is to add in some sexy structure, which for me is something, I've been on all different sides of the spectrum with structure. I have been the person, typical high achiever, who's like, from 7:04 to 7:16, this is what I will be doing with my time. And then from 7:16 to 7:24, this is what's going to happen. And if I was off of that schedule by even just a hair, all hell would break loose. Like, it was not okay. So I've been on that side of structure. And then I've also been on the side of like, you know what? I'm just not going to have any structure because I'm going to go where my intuition leads me, and I want to have spaciousness in my day to do what I want when I please, and it all gets done. I love both sides. And wherever you're at on this beautiful spectrum, I love you exactly where you are. And there's power in wherever you are. And also, the thing that I find so interesting about self-sabotage is that the ego can very sneakily come in and feel kind of like those intuitive nudges, kind of like, oh, well, maybe I'll just go do this. Maybe I'll just go do this. That's taking you away from the actual goal at hand. And when I find that you have structure, and there's lots of different ways to set up structure, it's that sweet little pat on your back of like, oh, we're not going to do that. Remember, we're going this direction, right? Of like, when my ego wants to come up and self-sabotage, it's like, oh, no. But remember, like, this game plan that we have set in place. And of course, there's always space. This is like the fine line, is really understanding where is your intuition coming up and showing you a new way versus where is it your ego self-sabotaging, which could be a whole nother podcast episode. But at least when you have that structure, it's like, oh, right, this is where we're going. And I was listening to a podcast with Michael Singer one time, and he was talking about, if you let this voice of the ego have reign over your life, if you let this voice of the ego just constantly rule over your entire life, then it's like having a kid in a candy store who's like, I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this. And of course they can have it all, but is it actually going to be good for them? Absolutely not. And within their life, if you just give them every single thing that they want, is that really going to be beneficial for their evolution as a human being? Most likely not, right? The same is true with ourselves. If you just give your ego free reign over everything that you're doing, then is that really conducive for your own expansion? Likely not. And so having an actual clear structure within your day, and this could come from a daily structure, a weekly structure, a game plan for your goals. There are so many different ways to break it down. There's a lot of the work that I do inside of Purpose Mastery and with my one-on-one clients is where we really get clear on what is the goal at hand and how do you want to break it down. And this could be as simple. I invite you to start as simple as, what are the top 3 things that I want to get done today? Only the top 3 most important things. Everything else is a bonus and or a distraction. And potentially even setting up a schedule and a structure for yourself to really be able to guide yourself in a new direction, such that when a distraction comes up, when an old way of doing things, when you want to cut the cord on this goal that you're stretching yourself into, you can gently guide yourself in a new direction. So again, it can come through a daily structure, come through a weekly structure, come through actually breaking down a goal and really knowing what you're focusing on when, so that you have something to come back to and say, no, we're going in this direction. It's a-okay. I see this self-sabotage come up, and this is actually the goal that's at hand. Do not underestimate the power of some sexy structure within your life. It's something that I'm so excited to continue diving into 2024, is really honing in on that middle ground of having space for intuition and having space for structure all at once. Okay. So the last step here is to be mindful of the initiations. Be mindful of the initiations that as you are on the path to expanding yourself, maybe it is stepping into this beautiful CEO leader version of you. Maybe it is launching and starting a business. Maybe it is, stepping up into these new goals that you see for yourself. As you commit yourself to this path, there are going to be initiations, these little mini choice points where you get to look and say, is this an opportunity for me to step into newness or to go back into sameness, constantly along your path? And you get to use your own discernment to say, is this an initiation right now? And what is the true truth of the moment? Is this a moment where the universe is like, hey, So you said you want this. Do you really want it? Do you really want it? Because here's a temptation. Here's, the old way of doing things. You could so easily go back to that. Do you really want it? Right. And that's where you get to come in with that greater knowing of like, yes, I am committed to this path. I'm committed to doing something in a new way. And therefore, I'm going to make this choice that's going to expand me. It's going to evolve me. It's going to feel somewhat uncomfortable in this moment, but I am going to do it. I see that experience with Black Friday as one of those initiations where I was like, yeah, I set this intention for myself. And of course, I can be like, oh, yeah, I set this intention, then I'm perfect and I perfectly follow through. No, like I have my moments too. Right. And that moment of like, oh my God, I want to sabotage this entire thing right now. And I just want to push something out and I want to do this. And I want to say, screw the entire path, screw slowing down to be intentional, screw it all. I'm just going to put something out there because that's what I feel like my ego needs to do to stay safe. That was a choice point of like, am I going to do something in a new way? And that's truly where I find having support and accountability in my life is the most incredible thing of really surrounding yourself with people who get it, people who can hold you accountable to say, hey, is this actually true? What are you getting from this? And what's the actual goal at hand? That is to me the most powerful way to really stay on the path is to getting to have those people in your corner who know your truth, who know your goals, and can gently guide you in that direction. So have fun with the initiations. Don't take life too seriously. As always, have fun with it. All of this gets to be fun. To me, it's like, you know what? You're here for your entire life. There's always going to be evolution. It is so short, yet so long, all at once, and there will always be something to grow into. So you might as well buckle in and have fun with it. Just because a new pattern is arising to the surface, or maybe you learned something new about yourself today, does not mean you've been doing anything wrong in your life up until this point. It is just saying, hey, here's another one. Let's continue to unravel this, and as we do, there's a liberation that comes. There is a sweetness and a fun that comes even amidst the discomfort. All right, my loves, that is a podcast episode that I have for you all today. As always, I hope that something has dropped in with your heart and created even just a micro shift so that you can really accelerate towards your goals in 2024 and live fully alive. And if it has, go ahead and send this to somebody who you love so that you guys can be on the track to absolute infinite growth in the new year together. We all love a little bit of accountability. And if you are someone who wants to dive in even deeper with this work, you know that you have a massive vision for what you want to create in the new year. And you're excited to bust through any limiting beliefs, anything behind closed doors, and really game plan moving forward. Well, there are going to be opportunities to work together in 2024. So check out the application that's in the show notes. Once you fill that out, you will be on our wait list and you will be the first to know when spots open in the new year. With all that said, I love you and I'll see you on the next episode.